Welcome to Community Table, where I take your pantry staples on a trip around the world. Now listen, we're back after a few weeks off, and I knew that we couldn't just come back with any old recipe. So I was looking for a recipe that had something to really teach us beyond how to cook. Maybe a recipe that could teach us how to be. And I think I found it. It's an ancient Indian recipe called Khichdi. Say it after me, Khichdi. It's actually really fun to say. And it's a very simple, humble dish. It's a porridge of rice and lentils. But if you look at the history of this dish, it really has a lot to teach us about welcoming people to the table, pulling people in, unifying us. And I think that's a message that we could stand to remember right now, right? So this dish started in India, and in India itself, people are so obsessed with it that there's probably 100 different versions based on where you live, what religion you are, how much money you have to spend on it. And back in the day when the Mughals came from Central Asia and took over India, conquered India, they were looking for a way to unify the country because they were Muslims ruling over Hindus. And so they did it through the joy of cooking, right? So they had their own cooks in their kitchens, and they brought in the Indian cooks into the kitchens, and the Indians shared some of their own recipes, one of them being Khichdi. And it took over that kitchen. They made their own versions using their own spices, dried fruits and nuts that they had brought with them. And the Mughal rulers were obsessed with it. And then through trade and through exploration, that recipe went out to the rest of the world. So now there's an Egyptian version called kosheri that uses pasta, because they were part of the Roman Empire, uses pasta and this spicy tomato sauce to bring the whole thing together. The Brits, after they left England, made their own version called kedgeree, which is rice and cream and butter and smoked fish and hard-boiled eggs. And I think if you look at any culture around the world, there's some version of rice and beans, whether it's in Central America, you could say paella is some sort of version of that. There's just a version of this humble porridge that brings people around the table, that is humble enough to invite people in, and yet expansive enough to allow people to say their piece. And that is a message I think that we could stand to remember. Okay, enough talking, let's get cooking. I've got equal parts here, rice and lentils. I've rinsed them and I'm letting them soak for about 20 minutes so that everything will cook evenly. Now I'm using basmati rice here, and these are the lentils I'm using. It's called yellow moong. This is basically those green mung beans that you see in all the hippie shops. And they've taken the skins off and they've split them in two. It's yellow moong. You can find it at Indian stores, but you can also use red lentils that you can find at any store. All right, you also will need an onion that you slice really thinly, a variety of spices, some cashew nuts, and some finely chopped ginger, and a green chili. This is a serrano that I slice in half like this, so it's just a little bit spicy, not too spicy. And you're going to need hing. This is an Indian spice, and it's one of the few instances where the Indian word for it is easier than the American or the English word for it. In English, it's called asafoetida, and we use this whenever we cook lentils and beans because it makes it easier to digest. So really handy if you have problems digesting those sorts of things. All right, let's cook. Oil in, just a couple of tablespoons. Coarsely ground peppercorns, 1/4 teaspoon of hing, a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Now I'm making this in my electric pressure cooker. You can make it on the stove top. Either way, it starts the same way. I like making it in the pressure cooker because it's quicker, and also there's something about pressure cooking that breaks down the phytic acid in lentils and makes them much easier to digest. And I'm just cooking this until those onions soften and brown just a touch. Things are starting to brown, so now it's time to add the rice and the lentils, which I drained. And I'm just cooking this to get rid of some of the moisture so that the rice and the lentils toast a little bit. And that's my little trick to get a little more flavor, a little more nutty flavor out of the grains and the legumes. I should have added this before I forgot. A bay leaf. You hear that? It sounds different now, right? It sounds drier. and snappier. It's getting a little snappy at me. Half a teaspoon of turmeric. Stir that around. Let it open up in that oil a little. I don't want a strong turmeric flavor, which is why I'm only adding it now. And I'm quickly going to add the water. About 4 cups in here. Ooh, don't go in there. Half a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to stir that together. Put the lid on and pressure cook this for 12 minutes on high. If you were cooking it on the stove top, you'd want to simmer it for about 30 to 40 minutes. That's it. Pressure cook. Time 12 minutes. Bye. So we're going to do brista, which is these fried onions that go right on top, sort of crispy. So I've got the rest of that onion going into a small skillet here. Right? You're just going to cover them in oil. And so you just cook these until they're crispy and brown and beautiful, and you just want to eat them all, which is a very hard part about making these. So that's going to take about 5-10 minutes. Just keep an eye on them, give them a stir every now and then so they don't burn. You see how beautiful they are? And I wish you could smell how sweet and umami they smell in here. I know umami's not a fragrance. Don't come at me, people. Anyway, they're all done. I'm going to put them on a paper towel plate. Now, while these have been frying, it's taken about 10 minutes. The rice and the lentils have cooked, and I'm just letting them naturally release in the pressure cooker. So now that we have this oil nice and hot, I've got these raw cashews, and I'm going to fry them up as well. Salt your onions so they have a little bit of flavor. They're all beautiful and golden brown now. Oh my goodness, look how beautiful. Put them over here. Okay, now same thing for these cashews. Make sure you salt them as soon as they come out of here. I left it to naturally release for about 20 minutes. Okay, so it's definitely cooked. It's a little thick. That's okay. Oh my gosh, it smells so ridiculous. Just add a little bit of water until it comes to a consistency that appeals to you. So I don't like it too thin. I'm going to pull this bay leaf out. Look at that brilliant yellow, huh? Gorgeous. And then you can pull that chili out too, unless you like to eat it. Yeah, that's more like it. Okay, let's make the tadka. Okay, for the tadka, you're going to need some ghee. You can also just use oil. And I'm actually going to use some of the oil that we just fried the onions in too for extra flavor. So I'm going to add 2 dried red chilies. If you can handle the heat, open them up and let the seeds sizzle in there as well. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic. And a few cumin seeds. And this is just the flavored oil that's going to go on top of the khichdi and just give it a ton more flavor. So now we pour that right into and give it a stir. Oh my goodness. That is comfort food right there. For any Indian you meet. Let's serve it. It's a big dollop of yogurt on top. Some of those crispy onions. Maybe a lot of crispy onions. Some of those cashews as well. And a little bit of cilantro. Oh, and a little bit of lime. can resist no longer. Need a bite with everything in it. Oh, it just draws you in. It's very warm and comforting, but very light because of the lime and the spices and the cilantro. You got that real warmth from the turmeric and the cumin. And the sweetness from the onions and the cashews is my favorite part, you guys. It's so good. This is a pantry staple that is so much more than a pantry staple. This is the dish that may unite us all. It has in the past, maybe it can do it again. Guys, give it a go. This is Khichdi, my version. Let me know what you think. Please post pictures if you do make it and tag me in it. I love seeing your versions of the same recipe in your kitchen. And I will see you next week.